there makers, it is Jo here, and today we're here with a tool masterclass and we're going to be looking at bias tape makers. They are a really great way of making accurate bias binding and a good way to use up your scraps. You might be making a double bias tape where the two sides are folded in together towards the centre because you're going to enclose the edge of some raw edge fabric. Or you might be making a single bias where you just fold the tape in half, and that would be used if you were making some piping, for example. It's really important that you get the cut right before you start, and then I'll show you how to use the tools. To ensure you're cutting your fabric on the bias, you need to fold it at a right angle, so that's a square folded diagonally down the centre. I've got a little bit missing there because I'm just cutting along this plane here where the greatest stretch and give is in the weave. Just be careful if you're using up bits of scrap, because you might take a piece like this and think, oh, I'd like that long edge there. But if you feel that long edge, that is the straight grain. This is the bias cut. Again, if I take this more unusual piece, this is the bias cut. This is the straight grain, and this is the cross weave. So we need to cut from here. This one is a 25mm bias tape maker, so I'll need double that width. So I will need a 5cm strip. Mark out your fabric and cut your strip accurately. I'm using a rotary cutter, but you can also use scissors. Once you've cut it, you've cut the fabric on the bias. I've cut two here and I'm going to join them together to make one length. You can also cut some more and join on to make longer pieces of bias strip. Don't forget, if you're joining your pieces, you can't join them end to end because then you'll lock off the weave and you won't get the bias continuation in your fabric. You need to put them at a right angle, and so here. Also on the 45-degree angle, so that when you flatten it out, you continue the bias strip. To make sure that you're accurate, draw a line on so that when you sew it, your ends will not be sticking up or below the main length of your bias. When you've sewn your line, have a test. My angle isn't quite right there. You can see that this is below the line, this is above the line, so I just need to change the angle of my bias line. So I'm going to unpick that and try again. That's much better. You can trim off the excess and press the seam open. Depending on which brand you choose, there will be some sort of feature that stops you burning your fingers or touching the hot fabric. So in this one, it's a little hook. So as you're working, you can hold this metal handle. And on the hemline one, it's a little plastic gripper here. And you pull like this. And the fabric's going to go inside. You need to have a point to start. It does help. If not, you've got to try and feed a straight piece of fabric through here and it's very difficult. Sometimes it's a good idea to pull through a piece of thread. If you're jiggling around trying to pull through a piece of fabric. Sometimes easier if you attach the end of the fabric to a piece of thread and then you can pull it through the binder to get it in position. If you don't have a needle and thread to hand, you can put the pointed edge into the binder and there's a little window and you can scoop the fabric through to start your binding. On the hemline one, it's at the back. Essentially what your binder is doing is it's folding the two edges of the fabric in so that you can press. You can of course just do it with your fingers, but the fabric gets hot, it can be inaccurate. Here it will keep the seam allowance correct on both sides. Don't pull through too much or it will start to ping out of shape. So keep your iron close to the end of the binder, pull a little bit of fabric out. And what you're aiming for is your outer edge of the binding to remain the same. Depending on your fabric, you might have different movements. So here, look, you can see the fabric has stayed quite close. And here it's started to blow apart a little bit. So you can readjust. But it's because I'm going quite slowly to show you. I need to do it a little bit quicker really, because the fabric has had time to sort of bounce out of position because I'm doing it slowly. If I do it faster, the fabric doesn't have a chance to blow open and create more space. So it's quite a hard thing to show you slowly. And you can also press from the right side to get your creases nice and crisp. And you've created a 25mm binding. When you get to the join in your fabric, you might have to pull that bit through. It's sometimes a little bit of a squeeze, again depending on the thickness of your fabric. So I'm going to do that bit by hand, and now I can carry on nice and quickly with the binder. You need to store this in a way that means that the fabric remains in that crease that you've just made. I've got a couple of old cotton reels that I keep, so I can either wind it onto a cotton reel, or you can wind them around pieces of card and put a little bit of washi tape on, or a pin. But what you want to make sure is that when you fold it, you don't let those folds blow out. You need them to remain nice and flat. You can make finer ones with the smaller binders, so there's lots of different sizes. All brands do different sizes, and it's the size of the opening here that gives you the finished measure, not the width of the complete piece of fabric. This one is a viscose one, so this one's a little bit more delicate, and this presses a lot faster than the chambray that I did, so you need to particularly keep moving along with that fabric, or you need to turn your iron down. But obviously you need enough heat in your iron to create a press, so it's always a good idea to just try it on a test piece first before you make binding and start melting your fabric. You can also make stretch binding out of t-shirt scraps. These are particularly good if you want to bind around the bottom hems of t-shirts, or you want to use it on the insides of anything like a stretch sweatshirt, or you want to replace facings with a binding. Of course, you can buy ready-made bias binding, and that might save you some time. It depends where it's going to go in the garment, and it depends if it's going to be a special feature. It's important to note that if you try to cut any type of binding that's going round a curve, it has to be cut on the bias. If you cut something just to make a straight edge, like maybe to go across the end of a zip or along the edge of a zip, you can cut it on the straight grain. But as soon as you start going around a curve, you need it to be on the bias, otherwise you'll get lots of ripples in your piping or binding. If you're making large quantities of binding, then you might choose to take a look at the Simplicity Bias Tape Maker. That's in a separate video, and it's much quicker if you're making long lengths of binding. But it is a more highly priced product. Lastly, just because I mentioned it at the beginning, you might be just folding your bias tape over for a single turn. And you might use this on its own for a very flat piping, say in the Carolyn pyjamas, where you just want a little bit of the fabric showing as a contrast. Or you could use it in combination with some piping detail. So this is some piping cord already in a piece of interfacing. You fold your fabric in half and press, and then your piping goes inside. creates a firm piping, which you can now sew for a more pronounced piping detail, for example in a jacket or across pocket tops. You won't need the bias binding maker to make a single fold bias, you can just fold that over. Today I'm wearing a toaster sweatshirt. It's made in Minerva's core range French Terry. This is a really nice turquoise teal colour. It's got quite a deep band on the bottom, and I've done some reverse applique here. So behind this fabric as a cutout is the fabric Sewing Sorority from Minerva's exclusive print range. So I've taken some of the images from that print, put them behind the fabric, sewed around the outside, cut them out, cut the blue off the top, and it reveals the fabric underneath. This is in a separate video if you're interested in it. As a little bit of pattern inspiration, you might be upping your bias tape maker game if you're making a quilted jacket. You'll be needing to bind all the way around the neck and around, so you want to have a good accurate binding so you get a great finish on the outside. You see that in the Hovia jacket, the Tamarack jacket, and any other kind of quilted gilet. If you're feeling really brave, then you might choose to make your own binding for the walkaway dress. It's a vintage pattern that's been re-released. The whole of that dress is edged with bias binding, so if you made your own, then you would definitely need to have some sort of tool help there. If you're looking to take your learning a little bit further forward, then you can check out some other videos on our Minerva YouTube channel. If you put bias in the little magnifying glass search line at the top of our website, then you will get lots of different videos all to do with bias, either cutting on the bias, using different tape makers, making your own bias, making a continuous bias from a smaller amount of fabric, and also a full demonstration of the bias maker, the electric one that I showed you briefly. If you're dressmaking, then these are perfect. They're just a little tool that doesn't take up lots of room, and they're great for doing sort of underarm or arm facings, neck facings. But if you're quilting, then you might choose to up your game to an electric bias tape maker. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that has helped you. If there are any other tools that you'd like a demonstration on, or something that you've seen on our website and you're not sure what it is, then you can leave that in comments below and we can add that to our list. We would love to see you over at Minerva, so do make a free account for yourself. You can add photos and descriptions there, and also you can check out other Minerva makers and be inspired by our sewing community. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.